to be here live in the flesh.
What's he going to say?
What's he going to do?
A lot of pressure on him. Just after a few days.
He didn't set him up well with the young guy.
Coming in live via Skype, so you're gonna enjoy that. In the meantime, a big story about the Navy that we've been on top of for a long time.
Absolutely. We start with the Fox News alert. Reports are that Eddie Gallagher's battle with the Navy continues to be ongoing, with conflicting reports this morning about whether the Navy secretary, here's the New York Times headline, Navy is said to proceed with disciplinary plans against Eddie Gallagher. This comes after the president tweeted on Wednesday that he doesn't want him to lose his Navy SEAL Trident pin, and that the Navy should get back to business. Well, the Navy thinking going back to business might be creating a board to strip him of his Trident, even though the president made his commander's intent clear. Well, the Navy secretary, his name is Richard Spencer, gave a talk yesterday in Nova Scotia, and he was asked, are you gonna follow through on what the president wants to do? Here's what the Navy secretary had to say.
Contrary to popular belief, I'm still here. I did not threaten to resign. But let us just say that we're here to talk about external threats, and Eddie Gallagher is not one of them.
Is the board going to go ahead on December 2nd? If you were to receive the order, what would the response be?
If the president requests to stop the process stops. Good order and discipline is also obeying orders from the president of the United States.
Sir, has the president explained to you his rationale behind restoring Chief Gallagher's rank?
No.
Maintaining his pin?
No, he doesn't have to. I do not interpret what the president does. I do what he says.
There's some spin there, because for the Navy secretary now to say, after these reports that he threatened to resign, good order and discipline includes listening to the commander-in-chief. If you had listened to the commander-in-chief a week or so ago, after he had restored Eddie Gallagher's rank, we wouldn't even be still having this debate. Exactly. But they decided to try and buck the commander-in-chief, and now it looks like they're going to have to back down.
Right, I was just going to say, why would the New York Times have that headline unless they were somehow signaled that that's what they were going to do?
Because and we had Eddie Seal. That would work too. Eddie Gallagher on the program earlier, and I asked him about that. He said because Admiral Green, who's in charge of the Navy SEALs, has wanted to prosecute him from the beginning. The Navy secretary listens to the head of the Navy SEALs, but ultimately this has become, you might say, a witch hunt against one Navy SEAL for very specific reasons. We asked Eddie Gallagher on the program earlier about this. Why has this happened, and what does the president's intervention mean to him? Here's what he had to say.
This is all about ego and retaliation. This has nothing to do with good order and discipline. They could have taken my Trident at any time they wanted. Now they're trying to take it after the president restored my rank. I just want to retire peacefully with all the honors that I've earned, get back to my family, and I don't know how many times I thank the president. He keeps stepping in and doing the right thing, and I want to let him know that the rest of the SEAL community is not about this right now. They all respect the president, and what the Admiral is doing, showing complete insubordination, is not the good example of good order and discipline.
When you said it was a great interview, and I saw Eddie briefly after your interview, and I said, I feel like you're on the 5-yard line. And he said, yeah, I do too, but the last 5 yards are the hardest 5 yards, because he still knows that there are some in the Navy who are pushing back against the commander-in-chief.
Why did the president get so involved in this?
Because he sees in Eddie Gallagher all the guys that have been pulling triggers for the last 18 years, all the warfighters who've been sent to do our difficult business, who've been thrown under the bus by a Pentagon it's very easy to second guess, and by rules of engagement under the Obama administration, which were heavily restrictive against these guys. He wants to undo that wrong, and Eddie is an example of that. And I think listen, the solution is simple here. The Navy could just listen to the commander-in-chief, issue the order to not go forward with this board because the intent is clear. So we'll follow this case. But as of right now, Eddie Gallagher is reporting. He's flying back to San Diego. He's reporting tomorrow morning back on duty, and he expects retaliation tomorrow. It's ongoing. It'll be amazing to see what happens.
Interesting. That's one battle going on. Another big battle, Rudy Giuliani versus Joe Biden. The president's personal attorney came on, did an exclusive interview with me yesterday, noon Eastern, on America's News headquarters, and he was fired up. He's sick and tired of the attacks that are coming in against him as the president's personal attorney. There's a story practically every day, some days multiple stories, alleging wrongdoing by Rudy Giuliani. When I asked him if he fears being indicted, he said he doesn't fear it. He said all along there'd be incoming once he took on Joe and Hunter Biden. And he says that Joe Biden has been lying about his son and his dealings in Ukraine for a long time. Listen.
From the day that Joe Biden confessed to committing bribery back in January of 2018, the crime of bribery is offering something of value to a public official for official action. Here's what Joe Biden says he did. He offered him a $1 billion loan guarantee. He threatened him with a $1 billion loan guarantee. Part two is he got the president of the Ukraine to fire the prosecutor. The somnolent Council on Foreign Relations didn't find anything wrong with that, although a year and a half later, when the false charge was put out that the president of the United States threatened Zelensky with not getting money in order to investigate Biden.
Great job with that interview yesterday, by the way. I mean, but you see, Giuliani, the mayor, seems to feel like I'm just doing the work that I was supposed to do. This is not about me and my own personal gain from this. This is about looking into what happened when no one else will. Is that your take on his view?
Yeah, because he's saying, the president is now potentially being impeached over a call in which even the Ukrainian President Zelensky, as he mentioned, has said, I didn't feel any pressure, whereas Joe Biden was overseeing Ukrainian policy. That's an official action that's going on. His son making over $80,000 a month on the board of a Ukrainian gas company, and Rudy Giuliani saying, I've been talking about this for months, and saying that this was a conflict of interest. Some of the people who testified in the impeachment hearings, career diplomats, they said they believed it was a conflict of interest in 2015, and guess what, Rachel? Nobody has investigated this. And you hear Democrats all the time say, this has been looked at, there's no there there. And Rudy Giuliani's broader point, I think, is actually there's there. And no one has investigated
There's
it.
not just there. There's a videotape of Joe Biden saying, you better take this prosecutor out at the same time that his son is on the board.
Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion.
Otherwise, you're not getting the $1 billion loan. Exactly. And so the American people look at this and they go, this is weird. Imagine if there was videotape of Donald Trump saying the same thing.
What do you think
there
the
wouldn't even be
Democrats
an
would do?
impeachment hearing. It would be over, done with.
No, that's what they always say. We've looked into this. Well, someone who knows a lot about these things is Andy McCarthy, and he spoke up about this particular case. Listen.
The main allegation against the president at the moment is that he was solely and only focused on the Bidens for purposes of 2020. The strategy in the Trump camp is that they want to make sure that what people understand that what they were interested in was investigating what happened in 2016, justifying that the position that the president had nothing to do with collusion, nothing to do with Russia, and they were probing the Ukraine part of that story. He was asking for an examination of something that cries out to be examined.
So, Ed, I mean, you talked to Rudy as well. Is he worried? His name was mentioned so much over the last 2 weeks.
He insists he's not worried. And I think here's the bigger point, is that Rudy Giuliani thinks he's maybe going to get his day in court, essentially, court of public opinion, in that Adam Schiff pushed away a lot of the Republican witnesses. They wanted to bring in Hunter Biden, for example. And what are you hearing from the president in the White House? Okay, let's have a Senate impeachment trial, and our first witness, Hunter Biden. The second one's the whistleblower. And so maybe Rudy Giuliani will be vindicated on some of this if Hunter Biden has to come into a Senate trial and say, well, the president on the phone call was talking about corruption in Ukraine. Hunter, what do you know about that? How'd you earn that $80,000 a month? Did your father call over to the then Ukrainian president, the previous one, Poroshenko, and try to work the investigation at all? There's questions that Rudy Giuliani's been asking that nobody's answered.
Interesting.
Well done, Ed.
Yeah, actually, well done.
Thank you.
She is expected to be released as early as this morning. Ginsburg has had 2 separate bouts with cancer in the last year, forcing her to miss court sessions in January for the first time as a Supreme Court justice. 2020 hopeful Tulsi Gabbard scores support from the son of John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Sean Ono Lennon tweeting, even if you're as skeptical of Tulsi Gabbard, you can't say she doesn't deserve to be part of this race. She is the primary candidate who is adding to a conversation around ending unnecessary wars. Please donate $1. She only needs 3,000 more individual donations. His tweet came in response to her request for more donors so she can make the December debate stage. You've probably seen this touching video by now. A colorblind student from Minnesota, we had him on the show not long ago. It goes viral after his emotional reaction to seeing color for the first time. Jonathan Jones joined us earlier to tell us about that special moment.
I started crying because I was full of joy and a little bit of sadness because I haven't seen this my whole life. When I put them on, everything like pops out and it's just amazing.
Jonathan's principal, who's also colorblind, let him use the glasses. And now Jonathan's mother started a GoFundMe to raise money to buy him his own pair. The extra money from the GoFundMe is going to go to raise more and give towards helping others who are colorblind.
Yeah, get them some eyeglasses. They cost a few $100. It's a lot of money for a family who's got all kinds of other expenses. And if your kid is colorblind, get these glasses. He's raised thousands of dollars on the GoFundMe page. It's going to help a lot of kids. It's great.
Think about it. The world, he said, was in colors of dull.
That's the way he
And then
described
it
it.
popped out.
And then the world popped.
And that's why-
And then you saw the I mean, it's just...
When he cried, it was just beautiful.
Very moving. We had
Yeah.
the principal on with him, too. Good job by the principal. Still ahead. President Trump ramping up efforts at our southern border by sending now national park rangers to crack down on illegal immigration. We'll ask Acting Homeland Security Chief Ken Cuccinelli about all that next.
Looking at the headline of park rangers going to the southern border and wondering what they'll be doing. Give us insight.
Well, first of all, the Department of Interior owns an enormous portion of the border. I want to say as high as 40% of the border is ours.
They do.
Yes, they do. And like I said, because the Department of Interior on the other side of the border influence very heavily the direction of the flows of people. And so they change very quickly. So we need to be able to change very quickly. Border Patrol has gotten better and better and better at that. They operate on intel and make adjustments on the fly. It will be very helpful to them to have law enforcement partners covering another third of the border to back them up.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about migration protection protocols, I guess, for migrants.
Right,
It's one
MPP.
of many different things, MPP, that you've got to deal with on the ground. We've heard about. You've had to deal with the courts. You've had to deal with regulations. You've had to deal with the protocols, all these things. And some of them are quite serious. You obviously want to take care of migrants as they come across the border. Some are innocents that are caught, in the crossfire here with these smugglers and all these awful folks who are actually breaking the law. So tell me what you're doing on the ground. I know Chad Wolf has had a lot to say about that. How are you dealing with it?
Yeah, and he was down there the end of this past week, the secretary, and what he told me was whether it was Border Patrol agents, ICE agents, or people in USCIS, the three immigration agents, phenomenally successful, phenomenally helpful.
So,
and really we need Mexico to maintain it and expand it.
So real quick, Ken, so you've got some success there, and meanwhile on the other side, the Democrats, they started out saying this was not really a crisis, it was a manufactured crisis was the phrase. Now I hear Elizabeth Warren on the campaign trail saying it's a Trump-made crisis. I mean, which one is it?
Well, maybe that's who she thinks manufactured it. But if you look at the numbers in 2017, which is now historically called the Trump effect, the fact that President Trump was coming into office and the whole world knew his approach to this subject drove our numbers in 2017 down to historic lows. And it wasn't until the courts, activist judges, and litigation commenced and loopholes were exploited that you saw the flows skyrocket. And the president has gotten us very aggressive, and he's been very aggressive with Mexico and the Northern Triangle countries to interject those flows.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, sir.
Glad to do
Have a
it.
good Sunday. All right, well, the issue of...
Now a new correspondent, Jen, her husband, and their new baby, Hartley. Hartley joins us live. Come on.
And public health advocates, and now warning against banning flavored vaping products. Take a look.
The one thing I see, though, and you watch Prohibition, you look at, with the alcohol, you look at cigarettes, you look at all, if you don't give it to them, it's going to come here illegally.
Yes, and the question now, should flavored vaping products be banned? Now, Rachel and I don't exactly agree on the topic, so we're going to debate it, but we're also going to get some help.
So here to moderate, Dr. Jeanette. She specializes in family and emergency medicine.
Good morning.
So, we don't agree on this, and it's because of the kids. I don't care if adults like Pete want to vape, but I do care about some of the marketing and especially some of these flavors. I mean, we're just talking in the break. One of them is unicorn poop.
What does it taste like?
Well, but most adults don't think about that. But I think a lot of kids might go, hey, I might want to figure out what unicorn poop tastes like and go for vaping.
Let's look at the facts. We have millions, not hundreds, millions of teenagers, middle schoolers, elementary schoolers who are vaping.
1 in 5
died because of vaping. So the flavors are attracting children.
Okay.
Mango, fruit punch, cotton candy.
Sure, they're also helping people who have smoked cigarettes for their entire life transition, who are old enough to choose. Now, Rachel's not a nanny stater, but the nanny staters always hide behind the kids, do it for the kids.
Yeah.
My answer is, where are the parents? So if you've got a 14, 15, 16-year-old, you should be monitoring what they're doing. If you want to set a law of 18 to 21, that's fine. But ultimately, we fought a revolution in this country so we could be free to choose things, even if they're bad for us.
Absolutely, but what's happening is we have companies like Juul who are marketing towards children.
Right.
Because if you can get a child hooked at a young age, most likely they're going to be lifelong
Hold on, here's
addicts.
the other misinformation here, though, because all the cases of people getting sick for vaping, these are not Juul products. These are bootleg bootlegged products off the street, which are laced with the wrong materials, and they're also THC or marijuana. So Juul gets the rap, but there aren't a bunch of cases of Juul products hurting people.
There's two different issues. There's children being addicted to vaping, and then we have the black market bootleg marijuana cartridges. But still, Juul, companies like Juul are targeting children on social media, on Instagram, with cotton candy and fruit punch and watermelon to attract them in, because kids are curious.
And we were seeing smoking. So there's a debate about whether it's a gateway to smoking, which I believe it is.
It is.
Smoking rates were declining among kids. They're now going up again. So there is something there. I mean, the bottom line is, what's healthier, smoking or vaping? Doing neither is healthier.
Yeah, but you could say the same about targeting kids with violent video games. I mean, where does it
I have
end?
a problem with that too. I do.
So I just think ultimately you can get to a point where the government is making decisions that parents should be making and stepping in for their kids and stopping them from doing this.
When we have thousands of people becoming ill and hospitalized and people are dying, the government needs to step in, because we need to protect our youth, future generations that are becoming addicts. We have to do that, because the studies show that some of these children who begin vaping, within 6 months to 18 months will become regular cigarette smokers. And smoking causes more deaths in this country than drugs, alcohol, car accidents, guns, and HIV combined.
But last time I checked, I'm free to be stupid.
You're not. You can do what you want, but we've got to protect our children.
It's a great debate.
Yeah.
It is.
Email
Thank
us,
you,
tell
Doctor.
us what you
Appreciate
think.
it.
And thanks, Dr.
Yes,
Jeanette.
my pleasure.
All right, maybe we'll agree eventually. All right, still we do. Still ahead, Democrats just wrapped up marathon impeachment hearings, and guess what? They may not be done yet. What Adam Schiff is saying this morning. Dan Bongino sounds off.
This week with Rick Perry. He's the outgoing Energy Secretary. Remember, he ran for president twice. In this,
he wanted that job right there.
He wanted to be president. He tells me now in this interview, he's very candid on the way out the door now. He's leaving the next couple of weeks and says, look, I'm actually glad I lost. I definitely want, I'm not lying. You know, I get it. I'm not spinning it. I wanted to be president. Ran against Donald Trump. He reminds me all the time, Perry jokes about the fact that he teases him, needles him. He says, but now that I've seen what he's been through day after day, I'm glad I never became president, because he said this man has withstood all of these attacks and yet has done great things. And Perry's very serious about his faith and said about a month ago he wanted to make sure he got this memo, one-page memo that I've got, that he wanted to hand it to the president in the Oval Office, because he wanted to impress upon him. It basically, the headline is, "We can all be encouraged." And it's stories about Old Testament prophets who were sent by God. They were not perfect, but they were sent by God to do great things. Watch.
God's used imperfect people all through history. King David wasn't perfect. Saul wasn't perfect. Solomon wasn't perfect. And I actually gave the president a little one-pager on those Old Testament kings about a month ago. And I shared it with him. I said, Mr. President, I know there are people that say, you know, you said you were the chosen one. And I said, you were. I said, if you're a believing Christian, you understand God's plan for the people who rule and judge over us on this planet in our government.
And less people on the left attack Rick Perry. He pointed out to me, he believes Barack Obama was sent by God as well. He said for that moment and that time. He said he thinks for this moment and this time, Donald Trump was sent by God to do great things. So we're going to play the whole clip later, but I think it's interesting.
I think it's very interesting. And by the way, I've always been concerned that the level of attacks that the president has endured is really going to dissuade a lot of good people from running for office in the future.
And I'll tell you, Ed, going across the country talking to supporters of this president, they feel precisely the same way Rick Perry does. They hear the attacks from the media about who he is and his background, and they dismiss it and say God has used imperfect people forever, because we're all imperfect. But what he has withstood is unlike what really any other mortal could understand. So that having that memo,
They also say, really I don't need a savior, I already got one. I've heard that a lot, and there's something true about that.
Good point.
We're looking forward to that interview. All right, turning now to a couple of headlines. A memorial is unveiled at the Walmart in El Paso, Texas, where 22 people were shot and killed earlier this year. Their loved ones gathered for a private lighting of the 30-foot-tall monument. The Walmart reopened for the first time this month since the August attack. And a pilot miraculously escapes his plane unharmed after crashing into high-voltage power lines. Deputies in suburban Minneapolis say the single-engine plane was dangling from the active lines for several minutes. Rescue crews then shut them down and rescued the pilot. Somehow, thankfully, nobody was hurt. And a dog lover builds the ultimate puppy house inside her home. The Texas mother of three, along with her husband, knocked out a wall under their stairs, so Jersey is the name. The golden doodle would have the perfect home. It even has a thermostat. because the dog tells them what temperature it wants. And cameras so they can keep an eye on her. Jersey also has a mailbox for letters from her Instagram followers.
You know who would love that for
Those
the
are your
dog?
headlines.
Jedediah.
She would.
She would actually. That might be in there.
And there she is.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning, Jed, Jeremy, and baby Harley. Oh, my goodness, and Daisy as well.
Yeah, you already forgot.
Not to be forgotten.
First of all, I'm going to need that puppy house. And of course, they know what temperature they like and they find a way to convey it. Do I have to teach you everything?
I made that up, but of course you believe that to be true, and that's why we love you. Thank you so much for coming on. How you doing? How's the baby? How's the family?
I'm doing great. We have Daisy here as well because she can't feel left out. I want to show you the little nugget. I don't know how good of a view you guys can get.
It's pretty
but
good.
That's a nugget.
I can see him.
She doesn't like to sleep at night, so we're pretty much team no sleep here. But it was good. And Pete, I have to tell you, because I know you did the contraction simulator, my labor was insane. I basically went in, I wrapped the whole thing in 6 hours, but I had to go to 10 centimeters with no epidural because I was laboring too fast that the hospital couldn't keep up with me. So there's this rule, apparently, Rachel probably knows, that you have to get a certain amount of fluids before they can give you an epidural. So they hooked me up to the fluids and my body was going so fast I couldn't keep up. So the pain was crazy, but it was like 6 hours and then I was out. So it was like having fun. So basically, Pete, you would have not survived.
Jedediah, I always say the first baby was the hardest because I didn't, how do you feel? How is it going with the baby? And who's getting up at night?
So we are pretty much, my mom came in and helped out for a few days, but we are getting up. We're doing it all. We don't have a baby nurse or anything. I really wanted to be with him myself because he's so little. I cannot bring myself to pass him to anyone. So he's amazing. He's so animated. He came out of the womb with his eyes open, looking around. And it was funny because in the delivery room at the end for the push, I looked at everyone in the room and I was like, I'm going to need some 90s music for this. No joke, guys. I took music that we would play on the couch and I danced my way through that push. That was the only way that baby was coming out.
That's great.
He's great. He just doesn't like to be in the bassinet. So Rachel, I'll be texting you as I've been, asking for tips because if he's in my arms like this, he's fabulous. If he's in the bassinet, he's not having it. So that's my main.
They're all different.
Let's talk to the proud papa. Jeremy, how are you feeling? And tell us about the grandparents, Tony and Solange. How are they feeling? They must be so proud.
Well, of course. And let me just say that nobody really prepares you for this at all. I mean, you think in the back of your head, okay, you're going to change a lot of diapers, you're going to hear a lot of crying, but it's a lot more than you could even imagine. I think we've seen 20 diapers a day at least.
More, maybe more.
I mean, you think of babies and you just don't understand that they do those behaviors that people associate with them all day long. And I would like to be by.
Does the dog feel demoted in any way in this whole scenario?
Yeah, she initially was very like, who is this baby and why am I sharing space with it? But she has warmed up to the baby. And the thing is, the baby, Hartley sleeps in the bassinet next to us and Emma's still in the bed because I'm, it's like, not Emma, Daisy, I'm sorry. I have another son, Emma, that I'm like, is on my brain right now. But yeah, Daisy sleeps in the bed. So I have to do that to make her feel like, okay, not your whole life hasn't changed.
Yeah.
So they're like little buddies now. So I'm easy. But remember, she's 6.5 pounds. So she's actually still the smallest one in the house.
Smaller than the baby.
Well, it's wonderful to see you. Go ahead.
Can I just thank everyone at Fox? I have gotten so many messages. I mean, Rachel, you've been amazing. Suzanne Scott, Lauren Pedersen, Megan Albano, like Nicole Sapphire. Like there's so many. Ainsley, my love. You guys have the women at Fox stepped up so much to be like, what can I do? Ainsley was like, do you need food? Can I bring it to you? So I feel so lucky, and Harley cannot wait to meet everyone. He misses you guys. So.
We miss you. You guys look great. Well, we can't wait to have you back soon.
Absolutely. He is beautiful. You guys get a little sleep. Try. It's not going to happen. But it's
Try to sleep when he
wonderful
sleeps.
to see you.
Well, she looks fabulous after all that labor.
All right, we'll see you soon. We look forward to meeting you.
All right, take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye, Hartley.
All right, coming up, a lot more news. Adam Schiff warning more hearings could be on the horizon. I thought they were wrapping up. Democrats continuing their long-running quest for impeachment. Dan Bongino has been clocking every last moment that's dragging on. He sounds off next.
President Trump blasting the left's push for impeachment, tweeting moments ago, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, AOC, and the rest of the Democrats are not getting important legislation done. Hence, the do-nothing Democrats' UMCA, National Defense Authorization Act, gun safety, prescription drug prices, and infrastructure are dead in the water because of the Dems.
And this as Adam Schiff admits that future hearings are not off the table.
Here to react, the president of the Adam Schiff fan club, Dan Bongino, down there in Florida. Good morning, Dan.
Wow. Let me tell you, the president of the Adam Schiff fan club. Yeah, you got that right. Just me and Adam are just best buddies. We're going out for coffee later after this
I'm obviously just teasing. He's now telling the LA Times, Dan, that there could be more depositions, there could be more hearings. Does he not see that this Broadway show has already been closed?
Listen, Ed, I'm a data guy. I like facts. I like data. You know, I went to business school. I like Excel spreadsheets. I'm patting myself on the back. I just like to see how things go based on what actual numbers tell you. This impeachment thing has been a complete, total farce for them based on the pure data. I mean, let's think this thing through for a minute. Trump approval moved up. Fundraising for the GOP, the RNC, and the Trump campaign went up. Swing state polls, notably Wisconsin, were switched in Trump's direction. Independents, they had in one poll I saw a close to 20-point drop in this for independents. Ed, it's been a disaster. These are legitimate facts and figures anybody can check. And pile on that the fact that this whole thing started because of a fake whistleblower complaint about an alleged this for that quid pro quo. The only direct witness to this quid pro quo, Gordon Sondland, who spoke to the president, specifically said that the president told him no quid pro quo. I mean, I don't know how you rescue this abomination of a process at this point.
So your book is titled "The Exoneration of Donald Trump: The Failed Takedown of Donald Trump." So I mean, you're saying this is essentially another failed take.